before settling down here in Ottawa about 10 years ago. She is currently temporarily hosting the CBC province-wide noon call-in show program throughout the election. And Amanda, please take it away.
Okay, well, hello and welcome to this community debate. And thank you, Judith. And thank you to the community associations that help make this debate possible. This will be a 2-hour debate, and we are lucky to have all 8 candidates participating in this debate in Ottawa Centre, which is quite a feat, and suggests that all of you have put it in the effort and the time and expense for participating in our political process. And we thank you for that. And thank you for taking part in this debate. These questions come from both community associations, as well as from people who sent us questions through mail, and we received a lot. There will be questions themed around community questions, the economy, the environment, healthcare, as well as some miscellaneous questions. Ken Hoffman is also watching on Twitter. The hashtag is Ottawa Centre Debate for people who want to pose a question during the debate. If I've made a mistake with the hashtag, Ken, let me know. We may be able to poke in 1 or 2 questions through the debate of that, but we are leaning mostly on all of those many questions that you sent to us. Now, all candidates will have a chance to answer some questions, and other questions will be directed at 2 candidates as suggested by the person who sent us in that question. Now, each candidate will have between 60 seconds and 2 minutes to respond, depending on the section we are in. Now, we don't, why don't we allow the candidates to introduce themselves in the order that they will be giving their opening statements, and we'll start with Yasser Naqvi. Go ahead.
Thank you, Amanda. Good evening, everyone. My name is Yasser Naqvi. I am your Liberal Party candidate in Ottawa Centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. My name is Angela McEwen. I'm the NDP candidate here in Ottawa Centre.
Hi, everyone. Bonsoir tout le monde. Carol CLEMENHAGEN, your Conservative Party candidate.
Shelby?
Hello, everybody. My name's Shelby Bertrand, and I'm the Animal Protection Party candidate for Ottawa Centre.
And Alex?
Hi, my name is Alec MacDonald, and I'm the Communist Party candidate for Ottawa Centre.
And Angela?
Hi, I'm Angella KELLER-HERZOG, and I'm the candidate for the Green Party of Canada.
And Regina? We can't hear you, Regina.
Hi, I'm Regina Watiel, and I'm the People's Party candidate for Ottawa Centre.
And Richard Rich. I think maybe your mic is on.
Okay, let's try that. Bonjour. Is it working?
Yeah, it's working. Go ahead.
Sorry. Bonjour, mon nom c'est Richard Joyal. My name is Richard Joyal. I am the independent candidate for Ottawa Centre, and thank you for allowing me to be here, and cheers to everybody.
Okay, that's a good exercise, because now we've all figured out how to turn it on and off our microphones. A good start. We're now ready for opening statements. Each candidate has 2 minutes to give their opening statements, and we will begin with, in that same order, with Yasser Naqvi. Go ahead.
Well, good evening, and thank you very much, Amanda, for moderating today's session. My name is Yasser Naqvi. I'm the Liberal Party candidate in Ottawa Centre. I'm joining you from my home in the community which is situated on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin and the Anishinaabe peoples. I want to thank all the community associations for hosting this event. I know it takes a lot of work to put them together, and I have to be honest, I miss seeing all of you in person at the St. George's Parish, where usually these debates are hosted. I've had the great honor of being your member of provincial parliament for almost 11 years until 2018. As such, I have the experience and credibility of delivering on behalf of the community. Tonight, we will be discussing some very complex issues, both nationally and for our community. And as is the case usually in these debates, you may hear some very simple solutions to these complex problems, and perhaps including from me. You may even hear that in some of the issues, somehow I'm personally responsible for it, and I guess that's the nature of debates like these. I am going to endeavor my very best to give you factual answers to these complex problems as much as possible. And my commitment to you has always been that I will work hard for you as your member of parliament. I will engage with you. I will work with you to develop solutions to some of these issues that are facing our community and our country. And I am confident that together we will build a better community. My name is Yasir Naqvi. I'm your Liberal candidate. And on September 20th, I hope I can earn your vote. Thank you very much.
Angela, go ahead.
Thanks, Amanda. My name is Angela McEwen, and I'm running to be your next NDP Member of Parliament for Ottawa Centre. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm joining you today from my home in Centretown on the unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin territory of the Anishinaabe people. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight for this important discussion. Like many of the people that I've been talking to on the doors, I've grown even more concerned about the state of inequality in our community and across the country during the COVID-19 pandemic. Wages are stagnant, the cost of housing is skyrocketing, and so many of our neighbors can't afford the medication that they need, all while our government continues shelling out subsidies to fossil fuel companies in a climate crisis and giving tax breaks to billionaires who've profited from this pandemic. I'm an economist by training, and as an economist, I know that budgets are about choices. And our governments need to start making better choices, ones that put people first. The NDP is the only party offering the bold solutions that we need, like ending fossil fuel subsidies, taking profits out of long-term care, and expanding our healthcare system to include pharmacare and dental care. And we're going to do it by taxing billionaires and wealthy companies like Amazon. And these aren't just platitudes. I've costed this out personally, and I just wrote a book on this exact topic, so I know it can be done. It's not about technical solutions or it being a complicated problem. It's about political will to make it happen. I'm running to be your Member of Parliament for Ottawa Centre because I will make these choices for our community, and I don't trust the Liberals to act with the urgency our country and planet deserve. We don't have to settle for good enough. We can demand better. I hope you'll join me in fighting for it.
Wow, well timed, Angela. Carol, go ahead.
Bonsoir. I've been door knocking a lot lately. I hear frustration about the Liberals' election call, stress about rising cost of living. Seniors mention healthcare, young families, housing. People want a post-COVID economic recovery. I want politics to be about collaboration and accountability. The Conservative Recovery Plan follows that path. That means support for local priorities like the new civic hospital construction, renovating long-term care facilities, public transit, increasing the housing supply. Our plan builds intergovernmental collaboration to combat climate change, reduce emissions, add green infrastructure, meet our Paris targets. More than ever, strengthening local healthcare capacity for our growing and aging population is key. I am very proud of the Conservative commitment to unconditional health transfers to enable that strengthening. My career was in healthcare. I was the CEO of the Canadian Hospital Association. Yasir Naqvi had a long provincial political career and says he's ready to leverage that experience federally. Yikes. We are still paying off billions in electricity scandals from his provincial experience. Our Conservative Recovery Plan rebuilds the economy. It responds to our community needs. Why support me? Collaboration and accountability, the middle ground for policy development. I will stand up for Ottawa Centre and our community's needs. I'm asking for your vote on September 20th to be your Member of Parliament.
Also well timed. Shelby Bertrand with the Animal Protection. Go ahead.
Good evening, Ottawa Centre. My name is Shelby Bertrand, and I'll start by acknowledging our being on unceded Algonquin land tonight. I'm honored to be the Animal Protection Party of Canada's first Ottawa Centre candidate, running my second ever campaign. APPC is Canada's first and only federal party to devote any part of their platform to animal welfare. Even if unelected, our mere presence plays an important role in the visibility of animal welfare in the sphere of policy, helping it graduate from the sphere of activism it's beginning to outgrow. Far from being a one-issue party, APPC has a robust platform to rival that of any mainstream party, with policy on health, global affairs, education, the economy, and more. Some causes at the forefront of our mission this election include electoral reform, universal pharmacare, universal basic income, and a new relationship with Canada's Indigenous peoples. Environmentally, it is simply impossible to properly honor future generations without a climate change plan addressing animal agriculture. Our party's environmental platform is the one Canadians truly need. Canada needs a party with a truly comprehensive platform, a party ready to unapologetically pursue right and pursue it from a place of compassion and integrity. A step in the right direction for Canada starts with a visit to our platform and a vote for APPC. Thank you very much.
Does anybody else have birds in the background of their? I think that's awesome.
Those are mine.
They're awesome. That's awesome. And Alec McDonald is next. Go ahead.
We meet on unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. My remarks will be on foreign policy. David Pugliese has been a longtime reporter for the Ottawa Citizen. A decade ago, we, along with our NATO allies, bombed another country. David covered that story. He reported that some Canadian officers, in private, referred to NATO jets as Al-Qaeda's Air Force. That country we bombed was Libya. Before we bombed it, it had the highest life expectancy of any country in Africa. After we bombed it, it had slave markets. The Communist Party was against any military intervention in Libya. Now we are told that we must purchase new fighter bombers. Why, you may rightly ask. One of those in contention is the F-35. It is a stealth plane capable of carrying nuclear bombs. Yes, nuclear bombs. The Communist Party is very concerned about any actions that take us closer to the brink of nuclear war. We are against the purchase of new fighter jets, and we want to cut the military budget by 75%. And let's get out of NATO. There are many other areas where our money would be more wisely spent. Let's cancel student debt and make post-secondary education tuition free. If Cuba can do it, so can we. There is a housing crisis. Let's build 1 million new social housing units using green technology and cap rents at 20% of tenants' income.
Bravo, Alec. We have Angela Keller-HERZOG is next.
Bonsoir. Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for coming to this community debate. We are here today on unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. An Algonquin elder recently said to me that we all know that the earth's bounty is not infinite. And she's right. Vous allez entendre beaucoup de promesses ce soir, but ask yourself this. How is it that after 6 years of Liberal government, Canada's greenhouse gas emissions have gone up year over year, and we have the worst emission record of any G7 country? And ask yourself how they can say that we're moving towards a green economy when in the last budget, they gave $5.9 billion in new subsidies to big oil. It's the pipeline all over again. Moreover, the Liberal leader said in the French debate that he will continue to expand oil and gas extraction. In Ottawa Centre, We need to protect local green spaces, the urban tree canopy, especially at the Central Experimental Farm, at Lazy Bay Commons, and all of our parks. We need to address housing and homelessness. We need to ensure a basic annual income for all, and we need to navigate through the pandemic together. We need to do this with the knowledge that the planet is on fire. Justin Trudeau may have met the global youth leader, Greta Thunberg, but he certainly did not hear her when she said, "The time is now." Ottawa Centre needs a strong green voice, someone who has the courage to stand up for the environment locally and globally. Quelqu'un avec le courage de ses croyances, une voix pour l'environnement et pour l'équité.
And our final, no, we have two more. Sorry, Regina Watiel is next. Go ahead, Regina.
Right now, a growing number of Canadians are recognizing the need to fight for our rights and freedoms. The People's Party of Canada understands that the policies and restrictions being pushed by the Liberals, the NDP, and the Conservatives represent a fundamental shift to the Canadian way of life. Under vaccine passports, there is no normal. That is the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. That is what needs to be discussed. My name is Regina Watiel. I am a mother of 3 and I hold 3 science degrees, including a PhD in statistics and expertise in risk-benefit analysis. And I can say that what has played out over the past year, from the lockdowns to the vaccine mandates, is not based on the rigors of science, but on fear and distortion of the facts. Heavy-handed measures have caused instability and harm to Canadians, mental health problems, substance abuse, job loss, and access deaths in younger age categories. As a mother, I am also distraught that so many of our children are enrolled in universities they cannot attend, barred from classes in sports, barred from completing their hard-earned degrees. It doesn't have to be this way. We can return to normal in a way defined by the people, not the government. It begins by asking questions, demanding answers. Do we really want the government to micromanage every aspect of our lives, whether we can go to school, work, socialize with friends, play sports? How many boosters are we signing up for? A new one every 6 months? Israel is the most vaccinated country in the world. Why are they seeing a higher 4th wave peak, and why are so many fully vaccinated people hospitalized? There are many more questions than I can ask in this short intro, but they all need to be answered before we move forward. Thank you.
And our final speaker is Richard Joyal, the Independent, as an independent. You're on mute, Richard.
Okay. Wow. I'm very well with technology, as you can tell. So my name is Richard Joyal. I'm from Ottawa Centre. I'm right now using the location in 371 Gilmore. I'm nice and high up in the buildings, and I'm looking at this incredible community that needs so much. I've lived in this area for the last, let's say, 5 years, done business here for the last 8. I seek to become your public servant. I know that it's a position of 300 days, 16 hours plus working, and I can just say that it's a privilege to be so if I'm elected as a member of parliament. Right now, there is so much that needs to be done, and it's enough about talking about it, it's about doing it. It's taking about massive action. It's also something that I'm be vetting for. Accountability, trackability equals results. So if you discern to vote for me in this election, you're voting for us. I'm not me. It's us. It's all of us. So in collaboration, I seek to be able to be of service and at the same time to learn. Je parle français aussi. Des fois, je trébuche un peu sur mes mots, mais je suis un travailleur très dur et j'espère que vous allez me voter le 20 septembre de cette année. Merci beaucoup. I don't see the clock, so I'm sorry. Where's the clock? Do I still have time? Sorry.
You came in with 34 seconds to spare. If you have a couple more words you'd like to share with us.
Well, I wish everybody very well, and let's work together as a collaborative. And we can make this happen together. So everybody in Ottawa Centre, thank you very much for your consideration. Cheers to everybody.
Now we will start the questions portion of the debate. We have a couple of themes. We have a theme on the community, a theme on the economy, a theme on healthcare and the environment. Our first theme then is a theme on the community. Our first question comes from the community associations. Each candidate can respond to this question in reverse order from the previous. We will start then with Richard with this question. Okay, so here is the question from the community associations.
Okay.
After a long and sometimes opaque process, a site near Dow's Lake was chosen as the location for the new civic hospital. A number of concerns have been raised, such as the destruction of 600 mature trees, loss of green space, an unsightly parking garage, and poor transit/road connectivity. Will your party be willing to review the selection of this site? And independently of such a review, what would your party do to mitigate some of the above referenced negative impacts on our community? And we will start with Richard. Go ahead.
And the clock is where I don't see the clock. I apologize. Okay, so it's a very great question. All I know is that where the hospital is built right now, I was just there the other day with my sister. She had an appointment and I had a few little issues I had to take care of myself. Moving what is green is most important, of course, the habitat of what is there at this given time. All I can tell you is that I definitely would review it because this is a huge project. At the same time, too, there's a book that you have, The Hanging Gardens of Nebuchadnezzar, and you have structures that are built. So let's say we were to have to displace, we really have to really discern on what's going to take place, because there's 7,000 acres, I believe, out in that area. And if it was used, it would need to be done very, very carefully. Like the Buddhists say, when you move something that has a life, you must move it very carefully. And this green space is very, very sacred. It's just, how do we use it that it would benefit all the different people that need the healthcare? Because location.
And that's it, Richard.
Sorry.
Okay, that's okay, no problem. We have Angela, you'll get used to it. We got Regina Wittiel, who's next. 60 seconds, go ahead.
Hello, I would love to review it. My background is, I have a lot of background in risk, benefit, and options analysis. So one of the things I would love to do personally is look at the different options, look at the risks of each option and the benefits and how they impact the various communities. So often we don't look at all the adverse consequences of some of the solutions that are presented. So it does, so going out to the different communities, seeing how the different options impacts each community, and looking at the risks, not just now, but going forward, and assessing the benefits and coming up with an optimal solution. That's something, yes, that definitely I would love to personally take part in. Thank you.
And Angela KELLER-HERZOG.
Thank you. Yes, I definitely support that the site and the siting of the new hospital needs review. And I very much support a transparent process so that the public and all the citizens that have engaged and that were involved in the previous consultation can understand what is actually going on and who has the power and what is the logic. I think in terms of the criteria, we need to be clear with clear instructions to the site planning. We need a less sprawling campus with a much smaller footprint. We need to preserve our green space, including preserving at least 40% canopy on any site. And if we want to preserve the central experimental farm, as one of the candidates has said, then we should do it. We also need to have a commitment for a net zero facility. The city, province, and federal government have committed to net zero by 2050, so we should heed that.
Oh, I don't. Sorry about that. Next, Alec McDonald. Go ahead, Alec.
Yes, on the face of it, it looks like the Tunney's pasture is the better option. The National Capital Commission did an in-depth study. I believe they had around a dozen experts involved in that study. And they came to the conclusion that the area around Tunney's pasture was the better option. A few days later, Mayor Watson, accompanied with a few other politicians, without giving any explanation, unilaterally decided, to the best of my knowledge, that it was to be moved to where the current place is. So it, on the face of it, looks like a very undemocratic process that has happened. I agree with Angela on that. And certainly I'm in favor of a review. Thanks.
We have, next is Shelby Bertrand.
Thank you. APBC, given our commitment to the environment, would I think quite obviously support an impartial and expert advised assessment of this location and whether or not this option really is the best or only one for such a vital institution, which, as Angela Keller-HERZOG quite accurately pointed out, should in and of itself have as little of an imprint on the environment and animals' green space as possible. And that is another big factor that would be featured in the reassessment of this proposal.
Sorry, Carol, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Timely construction of the hospital on the site as planned is a healthcare priority. No one so far has mentioned healthcare. It's responding to a healthcare need in our community. Construction should not be delayed, certainly not by petty politics that we see being played out, especially between the Liberal and NDP candidate. This is a healthcare issue. It's a healthcare priority. That has to be our focus. The Neighborhood Association has done an exceptional job identifying areas for clarification issues. Of course, the taxpayers have every right to understand the impact on the environment, on transit, on surrounding neighborhoods. And the hospital and city have the responsibility to respond effectively to those queries. And I believe since 2016, the hospital has certainly had a community engagement.
Sorry, Carol. Angela McEwen is next.
Yeah, I'll just pick up where Carol left off. I've talked to a number of people who are involved in that community engagement with the hospital, and they're telling me that they aren't very forthcoming with any answers. There's no transparency about why this location was chosen, why it is, as Angela and Shelby both said, why the footprint is so big, why the parking lot is going to be so gigantic. So there are a number of problems with the site, but also the proposal. And what we want to do, what I have proposed, is certainly not petty politics. We have a pattern of behavior in this city where politicians side with developers over what people's needs are. And this includes healthcare needs. We absolutely need this hospital, but we need, we can get a world-class hospital and transparency and accountability from our politicians at the same time.
Yasser Naqvi, you're our last speaker on this.
Thank you very much. We need a modern 21st century hospital in a downtown core and not in Barrhaven. I hear this very clearly from members of our community, and it has to be done sooner than later. We've seen the impact of the pandemic and need for good healthcare facilities, and our civic hospital currently is almost 100 years old. However, I am quite disappointed by the process which the hospital has followed by not engaging with the community. The community engagement group that has been created is extremely important by ensuring that their views are incorporated. So what I want to do is reconvene that community engagement group, make sure the hospital there, discuss better integration of public transit, net zero standard build for the hospital, protecting trees. But in addition, I want to introduce legislation to protect the Central Experimental Farm forever. Amanda, you're on mute.
Our next question is directed at Carol CLEMENHAGEN and Yasser Naqvi. I think we'll start with Mr. Naqvi, and here is the question. This again is a community question, and it was posed by one of the community associations. After long sorry about that. Hang on a second. Here it is. The NCC and other branches of the Canadian government own valuable green space in Ottawa Centre and throughout the city, such as Juliana Park, parts of Le Breton Flats, and land proposed by for embassies in Mechanicsville. What would your party do to maintain this land as green space, which is increasingly important due to the pressures of intensification? We'll start with Yasser Naqvi. Go ahead. You have 90 seconds.
Well, thank you very much, Amanda, and thanks to the Community Association for asking this very important question. Ottawa Centre is very unique. We have a lot of federal lands in our community, and a lot of it is not developed. You know, the very first thing that I want to do if I'm elected as your member of parliament is to do a very thorough inventory of all those lands. You know, if you a bike around or walk around the community, you will see these lands, and I think it's important that we know exactly where they are located, how much space there is, what's the use is currently, and who's the owner. Because what I have learned also that there's different owners: Canada Lands Corporation, NCC, Agriculture Canada. So that's number one. Number two, I want to ensure that there is transparency. I want the local community to be involved and engaged in terms of any plans associated with those lands. So for instance, if we look at Honey's Pasture, I want to create a community group made up of surrounding community associations so that we can understand exactly what is being planned by Public Works for that particular piece of land. Lastly, I want to make sure that we protect and enhance as much green space as possible. I have put forward a climate action plan that talks about protecting green spaces in developing an urban tree canopy strategy. And as I mentioned in my previous answers, as it relates to Central Experimental Farm, I want to introduce legislation that will protect the farm forever as well. Thank you.
Carol, go ahead.
Thank you. I just unmuted. Off the top, one of the important things is for the Ottawa Centre MP to have a formalized role with the NCC. That has been sorely lacking under the Liberals. That will provide greater accountability to the local community. In terms of federal real estate, housing is a requirement. We should look at the federally held real estate portfolio and release a percentage of it for housing needs. On the subject of green space, one of the things that the Conservative Recovery Plan includes is a $3 billion investment for natural green infrastructure. I would like to, as your MP, secure funding immediately for our urban forest expansion. For the neighborhood associations, basically all of them are already thinking about tree inventories and expanding urban forests. We can start on that right now. We can get funding for our city, for our neighborhood associations, and start to expand our urban forests with climate resilient trees. That's going to help as well in terms of replacement of trees that will unfortunately necessarily be sacrificed for the hospital construction. We should be starting on planting those replacement trees now, where they should appropriately go.
Okay, sorry, Carol. The mic actually goes off and we don't get to hear the rest of your thoughts. Can you see the timer from where you are? Can everyone see the timer?
I can. So hopefully enough of it came through that you get it. I want to plant trees. We've got money to do so. I want to move forward and get it done.
Okay. It's when it turns scary red. That's the hint. Our next theme is the economy. This question is directed at all of our candidates. For this, we are going to start with Shelby and then go to Carol and then Angela McEwen and then Yasser Naqvi and then Richard Rich and Regina and Angela Keller-HERZOG and Alec is last. That's our lineup for that question. Here's the question. Each candidate will have 60 seconds Do you support the establishment of a universal basic income? And if so, how would you replace the complicated network of income support programs now available? And again, we're going to start with Shelby. Go ahead, Shelby.
I think the wisest way to go about establishing a program of universal basic income is with the strategy of phasing in and doing a transition in the truest sense of the word. Luckily, we live in a day and age where there have already been pilot projects conducted around the world, giving us hints about what to expect from such a transition. And I would walk Canada through that slowly with testing out universal basic income in certain regions before proceeding to a blanket transition. And the findings from both pilot projects around the world, as well as our moving forward step by step in Canada, will, I think, be the clearest indicator of what the phasing out of other means of help should look like.
Thank you, Shelby. Carol CLEMENHAGEN is next.
From the evaluations that I've read of the concept, usually discussion centers on the cost of the program. It's a very expensive thing to contemplate. On incentives, are there unintended consequences? Are people dropping out of the labor market? And the important question of what other programs would have to be cut in order to compensate to fund such a program. So the Conservative Recovery Plan focuses on jobs, economic recovery, and economic growth. That is in order to provide equality of opportunity for everyone. That investment, that moving forward, is a way that all of us can share in the benefits of work and of adequate wages, of increasing wages. So that would be my approach: jobs, economic growth, and recovery.
Okay, Carol. Angela McEwen is next with the NDP.
Thank you. In 2010, I wrote a paper called The Cost of Poverty in Nova Scotia, and I followed the methodology that had been used by the Food Bank in Ontario for doing a similar study. And what I found is that not treating poverty, so not giving people money and services that they need, is actually more expensive than it is to treat poverty. So provide housing and income supports. And over through the pandemic, I wrote another paper with some colleagues at the Broadbent Institute on what we think the solution to the answer to this question is, actually. So I encourage people to go to the Broadbent site and look for that paper. What we propose is providing that the federal government can provide an income supplement and work with the provinces to not claw it back. And that's what we're proposing actually in the NDP platform. We're proposing a guaranteed livable income for people with disabilities and seniors, because even with GIS, seniors are still in poverty.
We go now to Yasser Naqvi.
Thank you very much. And I want to be very clear. I support a universal basic income. In fact, when I was your member of provincial parliament, I sat on a cabinet committee that Premier Wynne had created called Poverty Reduction and Social Inclusion Cabinet Committee. And one of the tasks that we undertook was to develop a pilot in Ontario, many would recall, to introduce basic income. And in fact, we brought in people like Hugh Siegel, who's a progressive conservative, who gave us a lot of good guidance in terms of that pilot. We implemented that pilot. It was part of our budget with funding associated with it. I'm really sad that when Mr. Ford came into government in Ontario, he scrapped that very important pilot, because what we need is data. We need evidence to see that something like universal basic income works or not. In my opinion, it does work, but it's important that we do evidence-based decision-making. I will continue to advocate for universal basic income as your member of parliament. Thank you.
Why don't we go to Rich JOYAL? Go ahead, Rich.
So I think I got the unmuted done. So we're good. You can hear me. So I'm learning. So I'm absolutely for universal income. There's a lot of things that have to be reviewed. And I think that, yes, there's a timeline for it to be done. And it needs to be done as soon as possible. It also has to be taking in accountability and tracking the different areas through Canada, because the cost of living in various places is unbelievable. How expensive it is just to pay your rent. Same thing with the food costs, the increase. Everything needs to be done accordingly and fairly as well. So for those that are working and for those that need things to be topped up, also again, how it's dispersed, how it's received and how it's spent. And also I agree that we must have it where it covers the needs of people. So basically there's peace of mind. And at the same time, it doesn't penalize people, those that want to be more active and want to be entrepreneurs. So they're as well covered. So it should be covered from A to Z for everybody. And I can't see the clock.
Well done. Well done. Perfect. Regina Whitfield, go ahead.
Okay, this is a kind of complicated issue. Universal basic income, it sounds attractive. It sounds like it will combat poverty. But in order to do universal basic income properly, what it would mean is everybody would be entitled to it, everybody, depending on nothing. Everybody gets it. And then you would rework your tax system. So that's really not what we're talking about when I hear the Liberals or anybody else talking about a universal basic income. I have no faith that the government would do it in a fair and equitable manner, and I see it creating a lot more problems than solutions. So I do see it as a lot of times they are suggesting a base amount and then you claw back when you get into the labor market. So you are going to have issues with getting people into the labor market, and it does provide a disincentive. There's also inequality when it comes to looking at people's marital status. And if you're married, again, you're not entitled to as much because now you're married. So now you're looking at a marital kind of tax. So I don't see it being equitable. Sorry, timer went.
Nope, you did it. Angela Keller-HERZOG.
Thank you. I think that the COVID pandemic has unmasked a tremendous amount of inequality in our society and has aggravated it. So I think that one of the reactions then, in terms of the tremendous insecurity that the pandemic exposed so many people to, that our existing patchwork of supports didn't help with, we had the CERB. So this whole irrational patchwork, and some people in, some people out, some people falling between the cracks, makes no sense. So in the same way that we talk about regulatory certainty for enterprises, we should have regulatory certainty for individuals, that there's a floor they can stand on. The Green Party has supported a guaranteed livable income for a very long time, and I'm delighted to hear that so many of the candidates on this panel are on board. I think there's lots of both pilot experience and other nations' experience that demonstrates that this is a system that can very well work.
And next we have Alec bringing up the rear. Go ahead, Alec.
Yeah, the Communist Party is concerned that the universal basic income will be used to replace other social supports, and that the net result will be that people will get less income than they currently get under the current social programs. That's why we call not for a universal basic income, but like the Green Party, a universal guaranteed livable income, with a key on livable. Now, for the past 30 years, labor productivity has increased 40%. Wages have remained stagnant. So we can address issues of poverty by raising the minimum wage to $23 an hour. We can also provide 4 weeks of paid vacation pay. In other words, let's move the money from the top down, and we won't have to be so much concerned about a universal livable income, which we support.
Amanda, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. I will get this before the very end. Question number 4 in this category, and again, this is the economy again. This question is directed, according to the person who sent it, to the NDP and the People's Party of Canada. So we'll start with Regina Whitfield, and then we'll go to Angela with the NDP immediately after. Here's the question. You each have 90 seconds to answer. I also wanted to just flag that anyone who is listening to this live, if you use the hashtag Ottawa Centre debate, and ask a question. We will try to get one or two of those questions into this debate over the course of this 2 hours. So question number 4 is, Canadians are finding prices for their purchases continually going up. Inflation at a 10-year high may actually be underreported due to the inclusion of mortgage interest rates, a cost set by the Bank of Canada. Does your party consider inflation to be a problem? And if so, what would you do to address it? And why don't we start with Regina?
You're asking if we think inflation is a problem. It is definitely a problem. We've all noticed increased costs when we go to the supermarket, increased costs when we go to the pump. Affordability is a huge issue across the board when we look at affordable housing, affordable anything, and it runs the gamut for all income levels. One of the biggest issues that our party sees is the reckless spending by the Liberals. We're looking at hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent unaccounted for during this pandemic. We're at over $1 trillion in debt. It's expected to grow to more than 2.7 trillion more in debt before, plus 3.8 trillion in interest payments before the budget finally balances itself in 2070. So that's what we're looking at. And when you have this kind of spending, you're looking at massive inflation. You're looking at lower standard of living, and you're looking at people who can't afford basic things. So yes, one of the things is to rein in the spending, and the second is looking at the impact that the lockdowns have had in terms of people's job security and job losses, unemployment. We're looking at a huge amount of instability and supply issues, and that has also raised the cost of a lot of goods and services. So no.
Angela.
Thank you. This is something that I follow very closely for my work as an economist. And so one of the things that's happening right now is last year, when the lockdown happened, prices actually went down. So when you hear inflation numbers in the news, it's year-over-year numbers. So the numbers right now seem quite high, but that's because they're compared to the lower numbers of last year. So those are called base year effects. So the numbers that you're getting for inflation that sound a little scary, that is not 100% reliable because we had such a weird year last year. That said, the cost of basic necessities are rising faster than the average cost of inflation. So the cost of water is rising much faster, the cost of food, the cost of housing. So these basic necessities are getting more and more expensive at a time when wages are not increasing even at the pace of inflation, or what we call actually the consumer price index, right? So if you're at the lower end of the income spectrum, if you're spending all of your money on necessities, which a lot of people are, then you're finding that you don't have anything left at the end of the day. So the answer there is, we're talking about affordability on cell phones, we're talking about increasing wages for workers, and we're talking about making housing more affordable.
Because this issue of inflation affects the government that was in power until now, I think I'll ask Yasser Naqvi also if you can make a comment about this, and we'll give you 60 seconds.
Thank you. And yes, of course, inflation is an issue, and I agree with Angela's explanation as to why we're seeing that increase in inflation, because the comparator is to last year, which was a very different year. If you compare it to 2019 inflation rate, we are pretty much in the right ballpark when it comes to the rate of inflation. The other thing I think we have to be very mindful about is not to politicize inflation, because that is something within the purview of Bank of Canada, which is independent and arm's length when it comes to determining monetary policy. We have lived through a very strange time where government had to spend the money necessary to support people when the entire economy has to be shut down. We had to ensure that people have enough supports to be able to put food at the table, that are small businesses and have supports to be able to pay their rent. What we need to now focus on is to grow our economy so people can get employed and people can make good real wages, and that is going to be the focus of the Liberal government.
Okay. We promised that we would include some questions from our hashtag @Centre debate. And in the next, coming up after our break, we have a short break at the 8 o'clock hour so that you can hear a little bit about what the community associations are doing, and so that our participants can stop staring into the screens with smiling faces for just a minute. And so the next half hour, we're going to talk about our next theme, which is the environment. And we have received a tweet, and Ken Hoffman is watching those tweets. He's going to share with us a tweet, and we are going to ask the Liberals, Yasser Naqvi, Angela McEwen, and Karen CLEMENHAGEN to answer this question. Ken, what did you hear?
Thanks, Amanda. We have a tweet from Johan Hamels, and his question is, what is the position of the candidates on the nuclear waste storage plans upstream on the Ottawa River?
And why don't we start with Yasser Naqvi?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. My biggest concern, of course, is to ensure that we protect the vitality of the Ottawa River. It is a treasure in our community. It's a heritage river, and we need to make sure that all necessary steps are being taken to protect the water, to make it drinkable, swimmable, fishable as a resource. The Ottawa River Keeper has done tremendous amount of work in protecting the river and sharing with us the importance of Ottawa River to our biodiversity and our ecosystem. So I will do everything as a member of Parliament for Ottawa Centre to ensure that there are strict and rigid plans in place in terms of what's being proposed. There is obviously a very robust regulatory process to the Nuclear Safety Commission as it relates to any storage or disposal of nuclear waste. My number one priority, and I cannot be clear, my number one priority is going to be that our river and the biodiversity that comes with that river and all of us who live along the river are protected. And I will partner with experts like the Ottawa River Keeper and other scientists in our community and in the federal government to make that happen. Thank you.
We'll go now to Carol CLEMENHAGEN. Go ahead, Carol.
So clearly the issue is regulation. And as Yasser points out, robust regulation, which is in place at the moment. Disposal of nuclear waste is the question we're always faced with, right? As we talk about moving to net zero, part of that process has been looking at small nuclear models that can be used. That's part of climate transition to a net zero future. But the question remains what to do with the waste. So I believe that the process is a sound one. It's a regulatory process. I would point out, Yasser talks about the importance of the river. We all are devoted to protecting the river. That should include not dumping raw sewage in it as well. That's a more immediate issue. The Liberals have not done a good job in stopping the dumping of raw sewage in our waterways. So we need to work on that as well as a move forward to protecting the environment in general.
Okay. I'll give Yasser a chance to respond to that, but first let's hear from Angela McEwen.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Carol. We need to ensure our land, water, and air are livable for generations to come, and that includes any kind of waste being near the river and risk of contaminating that. When it comes to energy generation, I think we would prioritize both reducing, so the NDP prioritizes home retrofits and using heat pumps, so prioritizing using less energy as part of the solution, and and to protect the Ottawa River by ensuring that groups like the Ottawa Riverkeeper have the government support that they need to keep doing their important work. We really rely on a lot of volunteer organizations in Ottawa that are community associations that are walking around to make sure, you know, our tree canopy is safe to maintain the urban forests. And the Ottawa River is a prize jewel, I think, for a lot of people who live here. And we really need to support those organizations that are doing that really important work protecting it. So thank you.
We're going to hear from Yasser Naqvi, just a 60-second rebuttal, Yasser. And because we have an extra minute left, I'd like to let Angela Keller-HERZOG, the Green Party. I'm not clear on your position on nuclear in general, so it'd be interesting to hear a comment from you at the end. Go ahead, Yasser.
Thank you very much, Amanda. And thank you. No, it's okay. Thank you. And I just want to slightly disagree with Carol. You know, the Ottawa River Action Plan, which is a tripartite federal, provincial, and municipal funded project that has finally created a solution not to dump raw sewage in Ottawa River, is a result of all three governments working. I want to give where credit is due. Mr. Harper's government contributed. So did the Ontario Liberal government under Premier Wynne funded that. And the Liberal government under Mr. Trudeau also continued with that funding. I had the great honor working with Mr. Baird and Mr. Poilievre in ensuring, and then along with Captain McKenna, to ensuring that that funding was there for the city of Ottawa to finally put an end of dumping of raw sewage in Ottawa River. That project is done. Our river is much cleaner for it. We worked very closely with Ottawa Riverkeeper. I also want to say, agree with Angela McEwen that we need to support Ottawa Riverkeeper as well, because they are an incredible custodian of our river in our city. Thank you.
And Angela Keller-HERZOG is with the Green Party. Just some thoughts on this issue from you.
Okay, so the question was not actually about nuclear energy in general, but about the nuclear waste dump and nuclear decommissioning happening upriver from Ottawa. I think the situation is actually dire. What happened that in 2015, actually just before the election, when government isn't supposed to make big decisions, $1 billion contract was initially given by the Conservatives to SNC-Lavalin and a couple of other consortium partners, and that was renewed by the Liberals. And essentially what we're seeing is the privatization of the responsibility for nuclear waste storage. The plan is for a nuclear waste dump very close to the Ottawa River, and the safeguards will last for a couple of 100 years. And after that, for sure, radioactive materials will enter the river and that environment. So I think it's hugely irresponsible.
Okay, well, that brings to a close the first hour of our debate. Congratulations to all of you for making it to this point. We're going to take a 2-minute break. Judith Shane is with us and is going to take over the helm. If we want to turn off our cameras and just let Judith go ahead and share with us a little bit of information about the community associations. Go ahead, Judith. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Hi, everybody. Just to remind everyone that closed captioning is available tonight, and it's on the menu at the bottom of your screen under live transcripts. So we're letting the candidates take a brief 3-minute break to stretch their legs. And while we do that, we'd like to take a moment to thank the 10 local community associations in the western end of Ottawa Centre who organized this debate. And they are Hampton Iona, McKellar Park, Carlington, Champlain Park, Civic Hospital Neighborhood, Hintonburg, Island Park, Wellington Village, Westboro, and Westboro Beach. And now it's over to Lauren Cutler, who's going to talk to you a little bit about what community associations do.
Hi. I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about community associations, the importance they play in your community, and how community associations wouldn't be able to function without volunteers from their communities. Tonight's debate is an excellent example of that. We've been doing these for 15 years now, And without community associations, there probably would be very few public debates during elections. But there's other things we do. Many of you live in neighborhoods with skating rinks in the winter. Those rinks are run by your local community association. In addition to that, the associations provide a variety of social events such as carnivals, yard sales, parties, picnics for people who live in their areas, at least under normal times when we're not restricted and socially distanced. We're also involved with a lot of bringing forth the views of the community to primarily our municipal government on issues that impact on our local communities. The big one right now is the new official plan that the city is putting in place, that they've had a record level of involvement by residents of the city and the community associations of the city. Other city issues that affect all of us that we provide input to the city on are transportation issues, the environment, as well. More and more community associations are getting involved in local environmental projects, and some things such as tree planting or creating more gardening space in the community or in our local parks. All of these areas, we would not be able to work unless we had volunteers. And I would be surprised if any of the sponsoring groups tonight would say, we have more than enough volunteers, you don't need to give us a call. That's not the case. We're always looking for people who are willing to help out, be it on the social activity stuff, helping with our community rinks, but as well with dealing with City Hall and dealing with local development issues. I left that out. That is key in our communities that are facing a lot of intensification because the rules keep changing and we're the ones on the ground who have to deal with this. And it can be as mundane as some of the issues we find with our builders and the quality of the construction phase while their people are building and how that impacts on neighbors. So there's a lot of areas where we're looking for volunteers, including being able to publicize what we do. Some of our community associations are better than others when it comes to things such as website development and maintenance, social media, publicity, etc. So we're all, as I said, looking for volunteers. I think anybody who's come to tonight's debate has had to go to the Hampton Iona website to figure out how to sign in. So we would encourage you, depending on what area you live in, to go to your local association. If you don't know your association, you now have the address for Hampton Iona. You can come to us and we can tell you what association boundaries you live within. So I encourage you to get involved with your community. And I guess that's it. And Amanda's back, but I don't see the candidates back yet.
Great job, Lauren and Judith.
Amanda? Well, we just have a moment. Well, the candidates are rejoining us. Just wanted to let everyone know that if you know someone who wasn't able to attend tonight's debate, and frankly, I can't imagine anyone doing anything else but watching this debate tonight. But if they missed this debate and would like to hear from the candidates, there is an Ottawa Centre debate going on Thursday night, September 16th. You can go to the Glebe Community Association website and get more information there. Back to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Judith. And thanks to everyone for hanging in there. And thank you to the participants. Welcome back to the show. And again, this is a community debate for Ottawa Centre. I'm your moderator. My name is Amanda Pfeffer. I work at CBC. And we are launching into a new theme. This theme is the environment. The following question, two questions involve the environment. And the first question is directed to all the candidates. All the candidates have 60 seconds to answer the following question. Here's the question. I'll just tell you the order for answering this question. The order for answering this question will be Alec McDonald, Angela Keller-HERZOG, Regina Wattiel, Yasser Naqvi, Angela McEwen, Carol CLEMENHAGEN, Shelby BERTRAND. So Alec, you are first, and don't worry, I'll prompt everybody as we go. Here's the question. The federal government has in place the Greener Homes program, which provides modest grants to homeowners to make environmentally friendly improvements. How will your party provide greater incentives for Canadians to become energy efficient and environmentally friendly, given the urgent need to address the climate crisis? And again, each candidate has 60 seconds, and we start with Alec McDonald.
Our primary project in housing is to build 1 million new social housing units with green technology. That said, we also are in favor of retrofitting existing housing stock so that it is more environmentally friendly. We are going to be taxing corporations at double their current tax rate. We are going to be taxing the capital gains tax at 100% of the gains rather than the current rate. So we have methods of bringing in more income from the wealthy and the wealthy corporations. And with this income, we will be able to support existing homeowners in retrofitting their houses. Thanks.
Next is Angela KELLER-HERZOG. Go ahead, Angela.
Okay, thank you. That's a great question. So definitely energy retrofitting and making also new builds move much more towards a net carbon zero is of key importance if we want to get our emissions down. So the first huge way to approach this is first of all to take the massive fossil fuel subsidies that exist under the Liberal government, by one estimate at 18 billion, and in relative proportion, that's huge, right? And shift that to enable energy retrofits so that homeowners don't need to have $50,000 in their back pocket, but actually get help. Also shifted to renewable energy so that communities and renters, for example, can invest in community renewable energy projects that would then make our community overall less carbon intensive.
Regina Whittiel is next. Go ahead, Regina.
Okay, I think we all want cleaner energy, and when it comes to specifics for housing, from our platform, it's maybe more of a more general approach. We're looking at a holistic approach to the environment, looking at cleaner air, cleaner lakes, cleaner rivers. And we look towards innovation to make these things happen. One of the things that has been a number one issue is with the climate change is carbon emissions. And one of the issues that I have is that politicians like to take complex issues and kind of whittle them down to one simplistic focus, and then the solution is to tax people. So we kind of move away from that, and we find that those type of things have the opposite effect sometimes. When we look at emissions, that gives incentive to offshore emissions. We're looking at offshoring it, and overall you're looking at emissions from China and increasing our global.
Okay, almost there, almost. Richard Joyal, Rich Joyal, go ahead. Rich? Go ahead, you have 60 seconds. There you go.
Okay, so with everything that's been said, what exactly is green technology? So, you know, products coming in from other parts of the world, I think it's time that we start bringing everything back into Canada. I'm not talking about deforestation. I'm talking about using, let's say, hemp to create a lot of the products that would be needed to make new construction materials. The other part is that the buildings that exist right now in Ottawa Centre, a lot of the lower income housing, there is a need for retrofit majorly. It's unbelievable. Walk through some of the buildings and you're going to see how humid it is. The air is completely dense. It goes on and on and on. So cleaner energy, better technology, innovation, and also creating more jobs in the Ottawa Centre with the materials that we have and we'll develop together with new technologies. Thank you very much.
Mr. Yakvi, go ahead.
Thank you, Amanda. So we know that built environment is a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, and we have to engage in major retrofits in order to reduce those emissions. The Liberal Party has put out a robust set of initiatives. They're listed on page 45 of the platform, so I encourage you to look at it. But here's a couple of highlights. One, we want to make sure that all new build are done on net zero standard by 2030. For home retrofits, we want to give up to $5,000 in grants and up to $40,000 in interest-free loans to homeowners to do retrofits of their homes, and we have many older homes in Ottawa Centre. Also, we want to invest significantly in social housing to retrofit them, as Mr. JOYAL was talking about. That's an important investment. And last, we want to launch a community-led net zero homes initiative that supports projects where neighbors or communities or neighborhoods can come together to create net zero homes.
Angela McEwen is next. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so the NDP wants to improve the National Building Code to ensure that by 2025, so that's coming out fairly soon, every new building built in Canada is net zero. And having energy efficiency and sustainable building practices at the core of our national housing strategy, the 500,000 new units of affordable housing that we're building across Canada. That creates good jobs, delivers affordable homes, and helps make sure that new homes that are being built are energy efficient. We also want to work with Indigenous communities to make sure there's an Indigenous-led housing project to make sure that their houses are safe and secure, but also energy efficient. And the NDP has committed to retrofitting all buildings in Canada by 2050, starting with older buildings with targeted supports for low-income households and renters, and low-income loans or low-interest loans for homeowners.
And next on our list is Carol CLEMENHAGEN. Go ahead, Carol.
Thank you very much. So governments need to be obsessed at the moment about measures that can push innovations that reduce greenhouse gas emissions while avoiding increased costs. So one of the areas in terms of the areas that have the most emissions, of course, are buildings and transportation. So on buildings, there are practical things for homeowners, tax incentives, that will act as incentives and helps to the homeowners. On buildings in general, provincial and municipal levels have most control over those areas. So the conservative approach is collaboration with the provinces and municipalities to be able to move forward on building code changes, for example. That's going to take a lot of interaction with the provinces. We need a government that's going to be able to do that.
Thank you, Carol. And Shelby, you are bringing up the rear. Go ahead.
Thank you for that. I'll start by saying that something that struck me as interesting about this endeavor is that APPC believes that the onus has been put on individual Canadian citizens in an almost consumer type of role for way too long to try to do their part for the environment. And on that note, I don't think it makes too much sense at all to talk about incentivizing homeowners and property owners to do this. This would be supported as just one small part of the transition that APPC would lead Canada through. And it's a transition that science and a care about future and sorry, my friend in the background's interrupting me, that science and a view towards future generations calls for. And the transition overall would free up resources from other areas we would want to move away from as we move towards new things.
And open dialogue to our animal friends. We have a second question in this category in the environment. And here is the question. This question is directed to the Liberal and Conservative Party candidates. Each of you have 90 seconds to respond to this question. And here's the question. Addressing the climate crisis will be very costly, given that climate action is mainly at the local level. What would you do to help mobilize funding for municipal governments to do their part locally? And why don't we start with Carol CLEMENHAGEN?
Thank you. So the Conservative Climate Plan has been independently analyzed, and it delivers greenhouse gas reductions in line with current government plans and to achieve our milestone targets. The way forward, the most effective way forward, is in collaboration with provinces and municipalities. They're going to be absolutely necessary to get us to progress in advancing climate action and getting to net zero. Liberals have consistently failed to get provinces on board. So as we move forward, the array of activities that we needs to be quite broad, and it's urgent. We need to start moving forward as quickly as possible. So incentives, working with the provinces, talking with municipalities to get practical activities moving forward is the Conservative approach, and which will deliver a collaborative movement going forward to actually start reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, which under the Liberals, as Angela pointed out earlier, have increased rather than decreased.
Yeah, Yasser Naqvi.
Thank you very much. I think we all agree that climate change is real, and we need aggressive, bold action to deal with this climate emergency. What it will require is that all three orders of government are working together. This is it's a big task, a monumental task that will require collaboration. Of course, federal government has a very important role to play in that. I'll highlight two examples of partnerships that I think is important in ensuring that we are dealing with this climate emergency. One is in the transportation sectors. One of the biggest things we need to do is to create alternative ways of people to get one place to the other, especially by investing in public transit like the Ottawa LRT. Federal government has played a very important role by investing in Ottawa's LRT, and also by bringing by 2030 electric buses to Ottawa so that we can change the entire fleet. Second, as we were speaking earlier, in our built environment, by retrofitting affordable housing units, social housing units in Ottawa, but also when we're building new social housing, as I'm committing to do so in Ottawa Centre, that they are built on a net zero standard. All these are examples of partnership between the federal government and municipality. Of course, hopefully with the provinces on board as well, because that is how, by working together, we will be able to take this robust action against climate change. Thank you.
Just to fact check, Carol CLEMENHAGEN, you said you would maintain the government targets, but the government had moved up its targets to reducing greenhouse gas emissions to 45% below 2005 levels. And does not your program say you will be reducing that back to 30%, which was the previous target for Canada? Both are still the lowest among the G7, but is that not correct?
I think it would be inappropriate to categorize it as reducing anything. The Paris target was 30%. As we move forward, it's a forward-looking process. As we make progress in actually achieving the 30% target. Unfortunately, under the Liberal government, we significantly failed to meet our 2020 target. In fact, something like over 20% failure. So let us move forward practically, effectively to actually achieve our climate reduction targets. And as Paris continues, the discussions continue, as science continues, as innovation continues, clearly there's a process of increasing our engagement in climate action, which is absolutely essential.
Okay. Yasser Naqvi, do you want to jump in? We'll give you 60 seconds.
I just want to say, going back on targets is not the way we're going to address the issue of climate emergency. Canada has made an international legal commitment by committing to at least 40% reduction. We have also passed legislation that requires to be net zero by 2050 with accountability. That's the path forward. We need to make sure that we are working on that transition, both in terms of our industry, heavy emitters, in terms of reducing emissions from oil and gas, as we have committed in our Liberal platform, and also by ensuring that our built environment and our transportation sector is also moving towards net zero. Thank you.
Carol, 5 seconds. I'm just kidding.
You're mean, Amanda.
How about 30 seconds, Carol?
No problem.
Okay.
So Yasser restates a number. He picks a number. There's the number. Where was he when we were trying to achieve the 2020 targets? The Liberals never talk about that anymore because they significantly failed to meet them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Carol. Thank you very much. And that is the environment portion of this. I see Angela with the Green Party. I know everybody wants to talk about this issue, but Angela, why don't we give you 60 seconds as well? And I know Regina has her hand up as well. So why don't we let the two of you do this, and we'll give others a chance in another category. Go ahead. Why don't we start with Angela?
There's two Angelas. Okay, I think you mean me. Thank you, Amanda. That's very gracious of you. This really is the generational issue. And as President Obama said, we're really the last generation that can turn this corner. So arguing about targets, boo-boo is, I mean, we need targets, but it's not the end of the story. And climate, it can be overwhelming and complicated, but it's also simple, right? What Canada needs to do is keep fossil fuels in the ground. We need to stop the expansion of new extraction projects. And especially Justin Trudeau in the French debate said he was refusing to commit to new fossil fuel projects. And this cap on emissions that he talks about, there's no pathway forward, and basically combined with massive subsidies, that is kind of a chimera, kind of like the pipeline all over again.
Regina.
I just have a quick comment. Mine is with respect to the fact that climate change is a complex issue. And I think really we should be opening this debate and this discussion amongst the scientists. We should have an open and honest discussion with the scientific community at large. A lot of climate change seems to have been hijacked by politicians that come up with band-aid solutions that often have the opposite effect of what was intended. So I see a lot of talking, I hear a lot of talking amongst the politicians about things that should be done, but what I don't really hear from is the scientific community. And I don't feel that we've actually had an open and honest debate that includes scientists. So that's what I would like to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next theme is healthcare. And we have a healthcare question from Twitter. And Ken is going to tell us all about that. Go ahead. Whoops.
Amanda, we have a question from J.A. Prue, and it's for the CPC and the PPC candidates. Can you comment on the issue of vaccine passports for travelers and federal workers? Whose rights should be prioritized? Those who choose not to get vaccinated, or those who want to work or travel without worrying about COVID?
Thank you, Ken. Why don't we start with Regina? Go ahead. We are going to give you 90 seconds for this question.
Okay, so on vaccine passports, our position is very, very clear. Vaccine passports are not the way to go. They are unethical. They are illegal. And there's nothing to say that that they have any what is the purpose of the vaccine passport? All right. So no case has really been made with regards to its whether it will be effective at all. When you look at the vaccines in general, the vaccines should be the individual's choice. So the individual should be well informed with their choice, and they should look at the risks and benefits of the vaccine and be able to choose for themselves. And their jobs should not be threatened, and kids should not be allowed to go to school. So when you look at the Health Canada should be providing the information for people to properly assess the risks and the benefits of these vaccines, and that has not been given. The risks and benefits depend on your age, they depend on your underlying health, they depend on your vocation, and they depend on your gender, they depend on many things. For a large portion of the population, COVID is not a serious risk. When you look at healthy young adults and children, they are at very, very low risk for serious COVID. And there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of risk with the vaccines. So there's under no circumstances should children and healthy young adults have to take this.
Okay, thank you, Regina. Go ahead, Carol. You're carrying the weight of the scientific community with you.
Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Well, in this case, it's a weight that I gladly will try to carry. Vaccines are safe, they're effective, they are the best way to protect oneself, one's loved ones, and the community at large. So the Conservative Party would like to get the vaccination rate up to 90% coverage, particularly now, given variants and concerns about health. With respect to the concept of a vaccine passport, we're talking really a very limited thing at the federal level to facilitate international travel. That's what we're talking about. We should not be in a federal election at the moment. We should be talking about increasing vaccination levels. We should be working with the provinces to promote vaccinations, to help people who are perhaps misinformed or have not understood the message about the safety and effectiveness of vaccines, to help people come on board, to encourage vaccination, not to exclude people or create divisions amongst the Canadian public. We really need to promote vaccination as the best way forward for our own health and for the whole community.
Carol, is there any daylight between your policy towards vaccine mandates at the federal level among federal workers and the Liberal government, which just introduced a vaccine mandate as well? What is the daylight between the two parties on its approach to the public service and transport, etc.?
I think what we've been trying to do is create that sense of togetherness, of bringing people together, of not making people who make choices about their own health to not be vaccinated, or perhaps they can't be vaccinated, to not make them feel excluded, to try to bring them on board for vaccination. And if that's not possible, to ensure that rigorous protocols of testing are in place in order to protect the community's health, but at the same time to have the opportunity to have people engaged and listen in the process of moving towards vaccination in a positive way, as opposed to creating divisions.
Okay, we have we're moving on now to a question in a category we're calling miscellaneous. And I think that we, in fact, do have time for two of these. Why don't we start with daycare? This is a question that is going to be to all of our candidates, 60 seconds each for this question. How will you work with municipalities and provinces to ensure the childcare policy is properly implemented here in Ottawa and meets the needs of the constituents? And for this, we're going to start with Angela McEwen. We're going to go to Carol CLEMENHAGEN after that, Shelby Bertrand, Alec McDonald, Angela Keller-HERZOG, Regina Wattil, and Rich Joyal, and then Yasser Naqvi. So we start with Angela. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think that childcare and availability of affordable childcare, affordable quality childcare is really critical economic infrastructure. And that's something that we've definitely learned during the pandemic. People can't go to work and they can't be effective at work if they don't know that their kids are safe and taken care of. And we're at risk of people leaving the workforce because they can't afford to have more than one kid in childcare. It's just so expensive all across Canada. And so I definitely think it makes sense to invest in not-for-profit and public childcare spaces, and to do that work with municipalities to find locations where we can have that that makes sense near workplaces, near schools, so that parents aren't driving all around the city, you know, dropping one kid off at JK and another kid off at somewhere else. So working to make sure that absolutely important.
Carol CLEMENHAGEN, go ahead. Just your aloha.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. The Conservative plan is for a 75% refundable tax credit to cover childcare costs. That is particularly helpful to lower and middle income families, and for families where people work shifts, work nights, work weekends. The maximizing flexibility so families choose the options that work best for them, for their reality. Childcare, of course, it is an important thing on the provincial level, on the municipal level, and that is where spaces will be created. But for families, I think the real focus is on flexibility and being able to choose the options that work best for them.
And next we have Shelby Bertrand. Go ahead, Shelby.
Thank you for that. Bridging across multiple levels of government is, I think, an indispensable tool in the hands of any leader actually seeking to accurately and with precision target issues that affect the quality of life of citizens in any case. Childcare is indispensable to the economy in our age of dual income homes, and it creates jobs directly while also indirectly boosting the workforce. And the benefits of children are pretty obvious, and they are multifaceted. They get a head start in reading and math. Studies have shown this. So APPC would ensure that all Canadians have equal access to affordable, quality early childhood education programs that honor diversity and propel progress for Canada beyond the classroom.
Okay. Next is, am I not mute? Okay. Next is Alec McDonald. Go ahead, Alec.
Yes, the COVID pandemic has really hit women's participation in the labor force. And it's an unfair fact that women, by and large, they took on the responsibility of childcare. So we need to address this issue. And the Communist Party's position is that we have a universal quality, free childcare with Canadian-wide standards. How is that going to be implemented with provinces? Well, we already have a roadmap with Medicare, and that is that you set the standards, which we said we will, and you tell the provinces that if you meet these standards, you will get the funding to provide free, universal, quality childcare. Thanks.
And next is Angela Keller-HERZOG.
Yes, thank you. So the Green Party of Canada is definitely on board with universal childcare as completing our social safety net. I think that Quebec has important statistics in terms of the economic merits of also enabling women to join or rejoin, in some cases, the workforce. We want to create the spaces and support the parents getting access. We also want to make sure that the spaces are, or that some spaces are culturally sensitive, so that Indigenous, racialized, and other vulnerable groups have equal access, because not all circumstances are the same. And we want to be sensitive in terms of implementing and executing the policy.
Okay, and next is Regina Whittiel.
Hi, so yes, childcare is very expensive and we do need affordable childcare. When I left university, I graduated with a newborn and a toddler, and getting into the workforce was very difficult with the expenses of childcare. But on this issue, I have to agree with Carol. The money is best when it's in the hands of the parent. It gives more flexibility and there's less waste. When you're looking at the government, it's generally inefficient, they're wasteful, and there's a lot of bureaucracy, and there's generally less flexibility. When you give it right into the hands of the parent through tax credits or whatnot, then the parent can use that money in the way that is needed for them. And it's, you don't have to pay forever through your taxes. You pay until the child basically gets to school, and then so you don't have that burden forever. So I do believe that it's best served in the hands of the parents, that the money is best served. Yeah.
Rich Joyal.
Okay, so coming to, sorry about that one second. So regarding universal childcare, absolutely. Now, really important. I have a daughter that has two beautiful children, and one was just born on, I believe it was July 2nd. There's two different people working in the home. And when I was speaking with my daughter and her partner, I found out that they end up not having the complete benefits to being completely covered in various ways. The same thing too, it's all parents. If it's a couple of various walks of life, they must be covered as well. Not only that too, transportation from A to Z. We sometimes forget the time lag in regarding to the time it takes to pick up the child or the children and then returning home as well. So making it extremely flexible for all people and to make sure the quality is there. Very, very important. Quality childcare is key. And yes, I'm 100% to make sure that people receive these benefits, A to Z. Thank you.
Yasser Naqvi, are you last? Angela, do I still have to go to you after Yasser Naqvi? Okay, go ahead, Yasser Naqvi.
Thank you very much. This is our opportunity to finally have a national child care program in Canada. Quality, affordable, bilingual childcare. The Liberal Party has put forward a robust plan to build a $10 a day childcare program across the country. This program will ensure, as has been said by my other colleagues, to allow women to participate even more fully in our workforce as part of our inclusive recovery post-pandemic. Unfortunately, tax credits will not cover the cost for childcare, nor it will create any new spaces. We already have signed agreements with 8 provinces and territories. If I'm elected as your member of parliament, my effort is going to make sure that Ontario also becomes a signatory to this important agreement, so our families right here in Ottawa can get $10 a day childcare. Thank you.
I did forget somebody, didn't I? Did I forget Shelby? No. Okay, we good. We good. We have probably time for one more question before we go to our closing statements. So our last question is this. And this one is directed, let me just make sure I have the correct people it's directed to. This is to Yasser Naqvi and Carol CLEMENHAGEN. The question is, which do you think is more important, our economy and trade on human rights? Sorry, which do you think is more important, our economy and trade or human rights when Canada deals with China specifically? Yes, so which, I'm just going to ask that. Sorry, there's a typo in it. I can't figure out how this sentence ends, but I'll just say it this way. Which do you think is more important, our economy and trade or human rights when Canada deals with China? Why don't we start with Yasser Naqvi?
Well, first of all, I think let me start by saying Canada is a country that protects human rights and champions human rights, and we should always speak up about human rights. We're also, of course, part of a global world where we trade with other countries, including China. And so it's always a matter of a balance to ensure that that we are able to operate and act in a multilateral environment. I'm a multilateralist by values and always promote a multilateral approach. But of course, be able to speak on issues around human rights, because that is also a core Canadian value. We need to make sure that we are always promoting Canadian prosperity, but also standing up for rights of Canadians and people around the world. Thank you.
Sorry, Carol, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Canada needs to work very closely with its allies to apply pressure, apply influence on China to bring it into compliance with the norms of the rule-based order of trade. So clearly, trade, economics, that's important for all countries. But Canada has a special role, I believe, in speaking up for human rights internationally. And so, for example, part of the conservative approach is to not import products made in China with forced labor. Also, we've been very clear in our advocacy and our sense of concern for the Uyghur population in China, who are subject to forced labor, genocide, which there was a motion in Parliament and the Liberals voted against it. Clearly trying to balance economy issues, foreign policy, et cetera, et cetera. Canada has a special role in speaking up for human rights, and the Conservatives will always do that.
Amanda, you're on mute.
Sorry about that, Mr. McDonald. Why don't we give you 60 seconds, Alex? I see that this is something that you want to talk about. Go ahead.
Yes, in regards to the Uyghurs, I encourage all my listeners in the audience to check out Max Blumenthal, who has a blog with the Gray Zone. He is a very competent reporter, and he looked into this issue, and he found that the source of this story is a fellow by the name of Adrian Zinn. And Adrian Zinn believes that he is on a mission from God. Now that should raise some red flags for anyone who thinks that such a person is an objective reporter. Yet, this is the reporter that the US government relied upon when they made their accusation.
Okay, thank you for that, Alex. We have time for one more Twitter question. Ken Hoffman is watching our Twitter feed, hashtag Ottawa Centre debate. And you have a question for us, go ahead.
So this one is from Sarah, and she says, so Millennial and Gen Z are a huge chunk of the voters, especially in Ottawa Centre. What are your parties doing for student loan recovery and better access to post-secondary education?
Okay, we only have time to pose that to a couple of you. I'm suggesting Angela McEwen, the two Angelas, how about that? Yasser Naqvi, and what about Shelby for the youth voice? Okay, so why don't we start? And if we have time, we'll see if we can fit one more voice in there. But we do have to be out of here and give you time for your final remarks. So Why don't we start with Angela KELLER-HERZOG? Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Amanda. The Green Party has a policy of wanting to invest in our youth. I mean, if we want to incentivize the future and future prosperity, we should not be having kids getting out of university with an average of $28,000 of debt hanging around their neck. So we advocate that the federal portion of the student loan programs should be forgiven and that post-secondary tuition should be free. And if you think that's very unrealistic, there's other countries such as Germany who definitely have this enlightened view, and it has benefited the German economy, the German people, and we think that Canadian youth should have the same benefits.
Oops, thank you very much. And why don't we go to Angela McEwen, the NDP.
Thank you. Yeah, part of my own history is that I didn't graduate I didn't finish my undergraduate degree in university until I was over 30 because I didn't have enough money to go to school after high school. And so I worked in the Naval Reserves and I saved up money and I went back to school. But for a lot, and I was the first generation in my family to go to university. My grandparents finished grade 8. So education was always very important to them, and they encouraged me to keep trying, even though I felt like I was way too old to be going back to school. So if you think you're too old, you're not. Go back to school. I enjoy it. It's totally worth it. What the NDP wants to do is we want to give graduates a 5-year break on loan repayment. The Liberals have temporarily paused interest on federal student loans. We want to permanently pause interest on student loans. And we want to forgive, after that 5-year break, we want to forgive up to $20,000 in debt, because Angela KELLER-HERZOG said that's just too much money for people who are trying to build careers and lives. And I've spoken to so many people who are paying back student debt, thinking about whether or not to have kids, trying to save up for a mortgage. It's just too much at that stage of life, and it prevents people from that equality of opportunity, getting rid of that intergenerational inequality that is so stubborn in Canada. So thank you.
Well, yes or Nakvi?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to remind everyone that I was part of an Ontario Liberal government that actually made post-secondary education free for low and mid-income students, which unfortunately, again, Ford government reversed that very important decision, because it was giving an opportunity for so many more young people, especially from Indigenous communities, from racialized communities, to be able to go to post-secondary institutions, because that is the kind of investment we want to make, we should be making. In terms of the Liberal Party in this election, we did waive interest on Canada student loans for 2 years. We are proposing to permanently eliminate federal interest on Canada student loans. So it's just not temporary, but permanently eliminated. In addition, we also want to increase the repayment threshold to $50,000. So if a student after graduation is making less than $50,000, they will not be required to start paying their loan back. The repayment conditions only apply once they make at least $50,000 or more. I cannot stress enough how important education is for the growth of our country, especially as we rebuild from this economy. Our best natural resource is our human resource, and collectively we all have to work together and work hard to ensure that every person, young or old, get an opportunity to get post-secondary education, because that is how we're going to build a country and be competitive around the world. Thank you.
Okay. I think that we'll sneak Regina in there before we go to Shelby. Go ahead, Regina.
Okay, so right now, I do have two of my kids in university right now. And the number one issue at this moment is the vaccine mandates. And we need to eliminate these mandates for students immediately. A lot of students are not allowed on campus. They're not allowed to participate in sports. Some of them are having their degrees threatened and they won't be able to complete them. This is completely ridiculous. So right away, we need to cancel the vaccine mandates. There's absolutely no basis for them. And there's no basis whatsoever to require any healthy young adult or child to be vaccinated with these experimental vaccines. That has to be made clear. For healthy young adults and children, the risks outweigh the benefits. The benefits for these vaccines in that age group are pretty much minuscule, if there's any at all. That is what the data shows. So Health Canada should step in here. They should provide the risk-benefit analysis that they claim they have. But going forward, we need to eliminate these mandates completely from the schools, and we need to open up the discussion. I can't make myself more clear. There's huge discrimination going on, and it's unacceptable in Canada. Thank you.
Just a quick fact check, and that is that that age group of 18 to 34, in fact, have the highest transmission rates right now in Ontario. And so just in terms of, there is a transmission issue, if not a, if the consideration is that they're not as sick. Let's go to Shelby. Bertrand, go ahead.
To ask if I necessarily have to respond to the education question, which could be found on APPC's platform, or if I could respond to Regina and her point that she's making about vaccines. As an immunosuppressed student myself, I think that it's frankly ridiculous to talk about a loss of freedom amongst healthy people who perhaps won't have severe side effects from the virus themselves, but who could transmit it to someone like me, who will happily stay home as long as needed in order to avoid a severe blow to my quality of life or possible side effects that will forever stay with me, that I've already been at risk for in other situations as an immunosuppressed person in my past, that have only gotten more imminent and encroached further on my personal bubble in this time of the pandemic. I'd like to ask if you think that it's so important, I'll make my question to you very specific here. If you think that it's so important to not risk people's jobs or attendance at school, would the People's Party of Canada give the funding and infrastructure for people like me to do all of these things at the distance that would be required, possibly forever after, if we don't vaccinate, especially with these variants in the picture?
Regina, we'll give you 60 seconds.
Okay, so when it comes to what we do know and what we don't know, we have to be very, very clear. So the CDC has already come out and stated that the vaccinated transmit about as much as the unvaccinated. And we have to also be very, very clear that these are experimental vaccines. We do not have any long-term safety data. A lot of the safety testing has not been yet completed. And so we do have to look at that. So right now, the onus is on the government to prove efficacy. It's on the government to prove that there is reduced transmission. It's under the government to prove that the benefits outweigh the risks for the people taking these vaccines. So what we are looking for is that proof. Is the onus is on the government to supply it, and we would like it to be supplied. So really, they haven't made their case at all, and there's no indication that the unvaccinated pose a risk to the vaccinated. It's ridiculous.
Okay, yeah, okay. You want to take a stab at that, Angela Keller-HERZOG? 1 minute.
I think that it's pretty clear that vaccines have been saving lives. My father-in-law is both old and very asthmatic, and I'm very, very grateful that he's had the protection of the vaccine. I think that what is highly problematic, though, is to use the vaccine issue as a political wedge issue. And I think that we're seeing both the PPC as well as the Liberals who raised this issue as their premier election issue 2 days before calling the election as a highly politicized issue. We need to come together on this. And I think that the only way to defeat the virus is in terms of a public health and collective response, but one that doesn't push anybody into a corner and that recognizes that different people have different histories, come from different places, and also have medically different cases. So that choice needs to be respected and accommodated.
And as for transmission rates between vaccinated and unvaccinated, the Ontario COVID-19 Science Table has done that research and done that science and found pretty conclusively that, in fact, people who are unvaccinated both have higher transmission rates. And we know from hospitalization rates that they are the largest portion of people in ICUs right now. It's time for our final statements. Everyone gets 60 seconds for final remarks. And we are going to go in the reverse order from how we started. So we start with Rich JOYAL. Rich, are you ready to go ahead with your final statement?
Unmuting.
Okay, good.
Okay, sorry, thank you. It's unmuting. So let's go with the 60 seconds. I see the clock. I've got it. 57 seconds. Number one, when it comes to vaccinated or non-vaccinated, I want to be extremely clear. I, as an independent, will be there for either or. Just understand what I just said, either or. There are a lot of things that we do not know what's taking place right now in given time. If a person was able to look inside the vaccine and see exactly what's being put into ourselves under a microscope, that would be different because we know what's going in. Number two, education for people. For me, the state should be paying for the education for all students, A to Z. We're a wealthy state. There's a way to bring up the money's needed to pay for the state. Getting out of university or college with debt is wrong. Getting to the fact about the Michaels. Where are the Michaels in this whole thing? They do not belong where they are right now. And as a nation are supposed to stand up for the freedom of all people, of all countries, and for all people from our land. Thank you.
Regina Whittiel, you get to go next. Go ahead.
The People's Party of Canada is the grassroots party of this election. The NDP have strayed far from that historical base. I hear Singh criticizing Trudeau now, but where was all that criticism during Parliament? His party just rolled over whenever the Liberals wanted them to. Ethics violations, scandals, reckless spending. O'Toole's Conservatives waffle on every issue. They were not an effective opposition and they will not hold the line now. The last 2 years have been very difficult for most Canadians, with bad situations made worse. My opponents all back harmful, non-strategic lockdowns and now call for unconstitutional and unethical vaccine passports in order to participate in basic daily life. If you believe in supporting local businesses, a transparent government that allows open and honest debate and respects rights and freedoms, vote PPC. If you want government overreach and a divided country with no way back to normal, any of the others will do. Thank you.
We have Angela KELLER-HERZOG is next.
Friends, chers amis, we need to take the lessons from our Indigenous leaders. We need to learn to live within the limits of the planet. We know that the climate change crisis, the fires and floods, the extreme weather are here, and that's why I'm running. The effects of these crises are always hitting the poor the hardest, and our children are suffering from eco-anxiety. We've heard lots of things tonight. Sadly, we did not hear the Liberals or others commit to immediately stop the expansion of oil and gas extraction, let alone leaving fossil fuels in the ground. They are responsible for the year-over-year increases in greenhouse gas emissions since they came to power. Now is the time to address the climate crisis, and now is the time to make your voters' voices heard. Now is the time to send a green voice to the House of Commons for Ottawa Centre. Une voix forte avec le courage de ses croyances.
Okay, Alex McDonald is with the Communist Party of Canada. Go ahead, Alex.
The current approach to the climate crisis is not working. In 2019, it was reported that 44% of the community greenhouse gas emissions in Ottawa were from the transportation sector. The auto industry has let the city down. We need to nationalize the Canadian operations of the Detroit 3 and retool them to produce zero-emission cars and buses. To get more airplanes out of the sky, we need a bullet train that can arrive in Toronto in under 60 minutes. We can create this rail system with a retooled, nationalized Bombardier and a nationalized CN rail. Air Canada will try to thwart this attack on their business. Nationalize it under democratic control. There is no time to wait. Thank you.
Okay. Shelby Bertrand is next. Shelby Bertrand is with the Animal Protection Party of Canada. Go ahead. Oh, Shelby. There you go.
Sorry, my space bar didn't properly unmute me. The authors of APPC's platform wrote, "Canada can and must lead by example." This appeared on our environmental policy, but it needs to stand for every part of the vision APPC has for Canada. APPC wants Canadians to be proud that their country is one that tackles inequality, has a truly representative democracy, and isn't afraid to lead in addressing the climate crisis by factoring in the relevance of other beings we exploit. Our science-prescribed environmental platform is the one platform honest with Canadians about what needs to change to honor future Canadians, and is backed by a party that will only support Canadians through every step of that journey. Canada has such potential on the world stage, and APPC wants to honor that by honoring Canadians to lead people who could lead in the world. A vote for APPC is a vote for determination, integrity, and compassion. Thank you.
Carol CLEMENHAGEN is with the Conservative Party. Go ahead, Carol.
We all want a return to prosperity and a safe, healthy future. Our recovery plans fast-track investments in infrastructure support local priorities. Liberal government has damaged the public's trust in government ethics and accountability. When government set targets, I want to trust that we are likely to meet them. Liberals make extravagant claims, announcements with the appearance of action without results to follow. It's tough for entrepreneurs emerging from the pandemic. As Ottawa Centre's MP, I will seek the advice on a regular basis of our local business improvement areas. With the Conservative Recovery Plan, as your MP, I will get them the supports they need to help our local business areas thrive. On September 20th, I'm asking for your vote to be your member of Parliament.
Angela McEwen is the NDP candidate in this riding. Go ahead, Angela.
Thank you, and thanks to the organizers for hosting us this evening. I know community association work is challenging and sometimes thankless, but I think I speak for all of us here when I say that this was an incredible evening. And what I want to leave you with is a question. What kind of future do we want for our country? I want my daughter, Anna, to grow up in a country that fights the climate crisis like we actually want to win it, where every single person has a roof over their heads, where workers are paid a fair wage, and everyone has access to the medication and healthcare that they need. I think we need policies that build the economy from the bottom up, providing good jobs and helping workers get the training they need, and providing the public infrastructure that our local businesses and communities need for a robust recovery. I've heard Ottawa Centre residents tell me they want a member of Parliament that's on their side, fighting for a livable planet for our kids and the bold policies we need to get there. On September 20th, vote for me.
Thank you, Angela. And finally, Yasser Naqvi is the Liberal Party candidate. Go ahead, Yasser.
Thank you. Now is a pivotal time for our country. The pandemic brought to light the inequities in our society. We have an opportunity to truly do better. The recovery must be inclusive, it must be bold, it must be ambitious. We need a $10 a day childcare so all parents can participate fully in the economy. We need affordable housing so everyone has a safe place to call home. We need a greener economy so our children have a world to grow up in. And we need to fight back against injustices that Black, Indigenous peoples, LGBTQ, and people of color are experiencing every single day. Ottawa Centre deserves an MP who knows our community and understands our issues and knows how to get things done. I have the experience, I have the determination, and I have the energy to serve with progressive values. My name is Yasser Naqvi, and on September 20th, I hope I can earn your vote. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much to all of you, the participants, for taking part in tonight's debate. There were no fisticuffs. It was extremely civil. It was so nice to hear everybody actually speaking about policy and their views in that. So that was really super. And I want to thank everyone who took part by listening as well. And again, we have 8 people in Ottawa Centre who took the time and effort and the expense to take part in this political process. So thank you. And thank all of you who listened tonight. We hope it has helped you make some of your decisions in this election. I'm Amanda Pfeffer, and on behalf of everyone who put this together, thank you so much for joining us. I hope it helped, and don't forget to vote.